Welcome everyone to the 15th edition of the Donor Centricity Collective Luncheon. Normally we would be by a pool with a glass of wine in our hands, under the sun, mingling with our peers, but alas, we're in this new world where obviously we're adapting to things like webinars, but hopefully, perhaps right now you have poured yourself a glass of wine and maybe you've got a bit of a vista in your background to at least simulate a bit of the joy of our donor centricity luncheons that we've had in the past. We're going to make this as engaging and as collaborative as possible in this format. So to do this, we're going to do three things. We're going to have a bunch of live polls throughout the next hour. So across our audience, we're expecting around 120 or so people joining. So a really amazing group to really add to this collective. So the live polls will give us a real pulse checks on what we're all thinking. We're running Q&A throughout the process. So really post your questions on that Q&A button, either at the bottom or top of your screen. And we'll endeavour to answer them at the end. And if we don't have time, we're actually going to answer all of them and post them in our show notes to the community that's joining today, plus the wider fundraising community later in the week. And as a third piece, you'll get a pop-up post-event survey with a handful of quick questions and really just, once again, asking you a few sort of outcomes from today, like what is that one big action that you're going to take away and actually put into place? Because without that, that's where the real value comes in. So special times. Special times need special people, needs special ideas, and more importantly, special action. And I think many of you we're all experiencing right now. And to give a look at the landscape, I'd like to start with what channels we're all seeing. And so many of you, obviously, the big ones are things like face-to-face is disappeared right now. Obviously, that's just not possible. Door knock appeals is another key channel for a lot of it, especially community services charities, that's not possible right now. Another big one is obviously event-based and peer-to-peer based fundraising, which has been a huge mix of fundraising for the last 10 years. And that's obviously not possible now. And as a final one, even with traditional DM, there's question marks on that right now, particularly like in countries like New Zealand, where they actually have put a stop on that type of mail. So where do we look? Now there are positives. We actually are, and many of you are experiencing, there are still channels actually doing quite well. So for example, the call centers in telemarketing are actually still holding, as of even yesterday, performance in terms of conversion rates. In fact, contact rates are actually stronger than ever, possibly because people are at home more. We have obviously social media as our other fundraising channel, which obviously, right now, people with their social isolation are using more and more, so real opportunities there. In terms of fundraising, SMS is another channel that's really performing still right as of today in terms of engagement and response. Once again, highly likely due to people's attention right there. Another interesting channel that's going strong and obviously will probably start to increase is obviously traditional television and direct television. In fact, I heard a stat the other day that in India, in just the last 2 weeks, an additional something like 70 billion minutes of television viewing has just been added on top of existing viewing. Obviously a crazy number in that country, but yeah, just to show the power of the TV may have an impact. And a final bit of a left field thought, Zoom, they obviously don't do advertising yet, but I'm thinking, is everyone just all on Zoom right now? And perhaps that could be a new channel for fundraising in the future. So the big question right now is, how are we adapting as a collective to inspire each other? And that's, I think, one of the big goals today as part of the donor centricity is ultimately how do we share thinking so that we ultimately inspire each other to innovate and grow more. So to start that, I'm actually just going to take a quick poll of everyone in the audience today and just get a sense of where are we at in terms of our strategic response to COVID-19. So if we'll pop up the poll now. So give you a short time to read through. So the options are you either cutting back and reducing your risk? Are you looking more towards emergency pills? Or are you more thinking, actually, some are saying like long-term and BAU planning and thinking right now. Some I know are doing lots of pivoting, especially in the face-to-face declines. What can we do there? And finally, maybe it's just a simple matter of, are you just tailoring your message more towards these primary concerns right now? So select a number and then click submit. We'll assume you've had a chance now, so we'll close the polling there and reveal the results on that poll right now to see what we're all seeing and hearing. Hopefully that poll will come up shortly.
Syncing at the end and just go.
Waiting for the poll, but anyway, we'll come back on the results of that. I'm sure there'll be some really interesting outcomes that we'll definitely share in the show notes. So we'll keep moving. So I'd like to also share a few examples of what we're doing ourselves from an innovation point of view, because how we're reacting as a response. So a handful of examples that we're involved with, I thought may help inspire everyone is, so from a LemonTree perspective, we've actually collaborated with a bunch of organizations to create this whole priming of donors. How in this time of downtime can we really just nurture and warm up donors so that when people come out the other side, they'll be in a far more engaged relationship with your cause. So that's a really interesting way of, or innovation through this period. Another example I'd like to share is digital television, which I mentioned before. Now, obviously, it's been around for a while, but and it's quite big overseas. And I think in Australia, this will be growing more and more over the coming months. So something to really look out there. Obviously, we're involved with that in terms of actually really trying to increase more propensity modeling into the actual understanding of donors for DTV. Another interesting area is social media. Now, I think this next 6 months is really interesting because is this perhaps as people maybe give less, is this a time to really grow community so that we're setting ourselves up for success in, say, 6 months' time to really have highly engaged communities around our cause? And a final area of interest that we're experiencing is just going back to traditional channels, the DM and TMs, and particularly DM, which has obviously had a decline over the last 5 or 10 years in terms of performance. I think right now people are isolated. They're looking for more tangible, personal interaction. So DM could be one of those channels, and this is where collaborative propensity modeling can help that in terms of digging deeper into your base of understanding who are the most likely to come back to you. Or maybe you're doing a more of a cost-cutting program right now where you just really can only afford to talk to the most likely people, and this is where those channels could be effective for you. So I want to jump to our next quick poll, which is on this. So it'd be really interesting and get a pulse check from our community today on where are our confidence levels? What are we forecasting over the next 6 months? I know a number of you, even right this week, have been doing the financials internally. And so are you on the optimist? Are you looking at growth? Are you looking at no change? Are you looking at moderate drops, say 1 to 20, significant drops, 21 to 50? Or are you thinking, wow, we're probably going to fall off the cliff right now and we just got to shut down for a while and then recover later? So I'd encourage you all to submit your answers and submit. We'll close that poll now because I don't think that should take too long. Hopefully this time the poll results pop up. We get a collective sense of what that looks like. But once again, if we don't see those results, we'll definitely share that at the end in the show notes. So looks like we'll keep moving on. So really to wrap up, I guess this section of the donor centricity luncheon on the now, on the COVID-19 and what's going on. A few thoughts that I can share is, I think really we're in this world where it's pretty amazing. I think we've got a pretty good opportunity to see a world that's going to come out the other side of this pandemic as quite self-reflected and empathetic, where I think the three thoughts there is that there's a real opportunity for us to connect through innovative channels. So what other ways beyond, say, face-to-face and other types of event channels can we create that connection? How can we really explore collaboration, not just between donors, but actually between other people and other organizations? There's real interesting opportunities there. And finally, people want to help more than ever right now. They want to help, and I think there's this real community spirit. So how can, as great causes, can we provide great value from a caring point of view? And that's a really interesting area to play with. Two final points. It's really interesting in the sense that this is a very unique global singular problem. I mean, in my opinion, I wonder whether we haven't had this singular global problem since perhaps even back to World War II. And from World War II, that's been seen as possibly the most innovative era in a long, long time. And so I think this period could be the next mass innovation period. To close, I don't believe it's governments that are going to really strongly improve our world. I think it's up to us as our entrepreneurial spirit to each of us make that big impact. So onto our donor centricity event number 15. The theme is CatchMe. I didn't introduce myself before. My name's Joel Nicholson, if you haven't met me before, founder of the LemonTree Analytical Collaborative. These luncheons have been going on for 4.5 years now, and we really step through these relationships, these donor relationships. In fact, we're actually recycling through right now, starting with the CatchMe theme, because the fundamentals of relationships don't change. It's how we look and how we learn at it, which is what we're evolving here. So the unique part about the donor centricity for those people who are new to this is that we mix in commercial with non-for-profit. So we always have a commercial speaker and a fundraising speaker. And to really broaden our thinking and our ideas, and ideally as a collective, we become stronger. To quickly help navigate over the next, say, 40 minutes, we're going to have our two speakers that will each speak for 15 minutes each. And then we're going to have a Q&A section at the end to round off. And this is where, once again, really encouraged to keep putting in those burning Q&A questions. In fact, I really challenge everyone to at least put one question in there. It'd be great to think that by the end of this session, we've got 100 questions in the Q&A that we can all reply to and share at the end of the event. We'll keep with these polls. And then the goal really is that final question, once again, to challenge everyone to what is this one big action that you're going to walk away with today that you can, a nugget, it could be actually big or small, but a nugget that you can really apply and create value from today's session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Joe Rogers from the Shepherd Centre, because I've known Joe for quite a long time, in fact 5 or so years now. I've really enjoyed working with Joe over that period. She's one of those few people that, or actually like many of you in fact, loves crunching the numbers and really testing and learning new ways of improving fundraising. One thing you may not know about Joe is that she has this background in chickens. Now, I might let her tell that story because it's definitely interesting.
Okay, so I think I'll just address that chicken comment before we start, because I don't want you all thinking about chickens throughout this presentation. So in a past life, my previous career was in agriculture, working in chickens. It's that age-old question, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? For me, it was chickens. I was a transport planner for a commercial chicken producer. And then after that, I moved into eggs and was customer services manager for an egg company. So enough about that. Let's get back to the fundraising. So as Joel said, I'm Jo Rogers, Senior Individual Giving Manager at the Shepherd Centre. I've been with the Shepherd Centre for 7 years. I actually realised this morning it was the 2nd of April 2013 I started at the Shepherd Centre. So it's great to be sharing our journey with you today over the past, I'm going to cover 9 years, but I've been involved for 7 of those. So firstly, just before we start, I'm just going to find out how many of you actually know what the Shepherd Centre does? Got a quick poll there. This is a pretty simple one. So if you could submit your results. Okay, we'll close that one off. We'll see if we get the results on the screen. Oh, okay, so 53% yes, know what we do, and 47 don't. So that's lucky that I'm going to tell you. So the Shepherd Centre was formed in 1970 by Dr. Bruce Shepherd and his wife Annette after their 2 children were born deaf. The Shepherd Centre's mission is to help children with hearing loss achieve the best listening, spoken language and social skills they are capable of so that they can achieve their full potential in the world. So as with all your organisations, I'm sure, fundraising is a massive part of that. The more money we raise, the more children we can help. We know that 50% of children with hearing loss in Australia, unfortunately, aren't getting the services they need. It is our mission and vision to help all of those children. But you can see from this slide the growth that we have had in the last, that shows the last 30 years, gosh. So we are currently helping over 700 families, and there's over nearly 400 of those on our early intervention program. So it is really important to the Shepherd Centre that we do have sustainable fundraising and that we do ensure that we raise lots of money to help all those children and their families. So I'm going to, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to take you back to 2011, so 9 years ago. So what happened in 2011? So it was the year that Wills and Kate got married. It was the year that Virgin Blue became Virgin Australia. And it was the year that the English cricket team won the Ashes in Australia. I couldn't resist putting that one in, guys, but don't worry, that's the last time I'm going to mention cricket in this presentation. So in 2011, what did things look like at the Shepherd Centre? So back in 2011, we had 1,200 direct mail acquired donors. We had 0 telemarketing acquired donors, and we had 45 monthly givers. And of those 45 monthly givers, we hadn't proactively asked any of those to be monthly givers. That was just people that had asked us if they could give us a monthly gift. So yeah, so that was something we once got told that we didn't do regular giving very well, and it was because, well, we actually didn't do it at that time. We didn't proactively do it. So in 2011, there was a big change at the Shepherd Centre. We had a new CEO, we had a new director of fundraising, new information analysis manager, a new direct marketing team. And what did we do? I think we did what a lot of people did back in 2011. We jumped into premium acquisition. These are some of the packs that we sent out. We've got tote bags there, tea towels, key rings, cards, wrapping paper, you name it, we sent it out. And we were mailing everybody we could. So just should tell you that the Shepherd Centre can only fundraise in New South Wales, ACT and Tasmania, because we have sister organisations across the rest of the country. So we were buying lists, we were swapping, we were co-oping, and we were mailing around between 150 and 200,000 packs a year from 2011 onwards. So as you can see from here, this is the number of donors we acquired in each year. So 2011, I think at that time we just did a Christmas appeal, and then we moved to 4 appeals a year, so acquiring 10,000 in 2012, up to over 12,000 donors in 2013. And at the height of our success, 2013, we were getting a 7% response rate on our acquisition packs, which was great. We were even breaking even, if not making a profit on some of those packs. So it was all great. We were, let's keep going. This is great. Let's keep riding this wave. It's going great for us. But we did see 2014 a downturn in the response rates to those packs, and then we sort of started thinking, what are we going to do if this doesn't carry on? And then we dropped down in 2015 down to just a 2% response rate, which I know for some charities that is sustainable for them, but for a charity of our size, we couldn't continue at that response rate and that cost per donor. So what did we do? We thought, right, we've got to change direction here. We could see this drop coming from 2014. We were determined to try and make it work. So 2015 kept going, but unfortunately it didn't pick up for us. So we changed direction and we moved across to telemarketing. So we engaged with our friends at Apple Marketing. Vicky, I'm not sure, I think you're due to be on the call. So we dipped our toe in the water in 2014, started doing some testing, and then 2015 went all in, again, buying lists, calling Apple's database, white pages, went all out into telemarketing, and again had great success, acquiring over 5,000 donors in that year. But again, performance started to drop, and we found it wasn't sustainable for us to keep doing these big campaigns, calling mass appeals. So I think, Joel, this is when I met you, was in 2016, where we were looking for a more sustainable option of acquisition, and we moved across to taking a rolling data every month from the LemonTree co-op. So since 2016, we've been taking around 5,000 records a month, calling those. This is the results just for last year and the first couple of months of this year. And as you can see, there's some ups and downs there. I think that's more about calling schedules than anything, but we are averaging around 104 donors per month across that data that we're calling. Those are performing really well. They're getting between the 33 to 40% second gift rate and converting to regular giving at around 8%. So we had all these donors, as you can see there, that's telemarketing and direct mail together. So you can see we had great success 2012, 13, 14, and then we included telemarketing into our mix, and then dropped down to the more sustainable acquisition that we're doing at the moment. But we had all these donors, but we wanted to keep them. We'd acquired all these, we'd had great success and acquired lots of donors. So our focus moved across to retention. And what did we do? Some of the retention pieces we implemented. So we added in a "Can you still be friends" card into, if anyone opted out, so they didn't want to receive mail from us anymore or didn't want to be contacted, we sent them a card saying, "Really sorry to hear that. We'd love to still be friends. Is it possible for us to just mail you or contact you once a year?" And that would get a great response to that. And for when we mail those people in appeals, their once a year appeal, we acknowledge that in the appeal, and we're getting around a 50% response rate to those donors that we just mail once a year. We also, to around 200 donors a month, we send out a handwritten birthday card. Our donor services team and volunteers write those. It does take up time, like all of these activities, but we get great comments and really lovely feedback on those, so they were really worthwhile doing. Same at Christmas, we send out Christmas cards to all our donors, handwritten, and luckily we've got some great volunteers that help us with that, but again, they get a great response. And also thank you calls. I'd love to have unlimited hours in the day so we could call every single donor, but we do call anyone that gives a donation of $50 or more. We do call them, again, with the help of volunteers and donor services team. We really want the and donors are often surprised that we're not asking for a donation, that we're just calling to say thank you. So we focused on retention, and what has that done to our direct mail income? So this graph, it shows our direct mail income since 2012 from our warm appeals, so our appeals and newsletters, and also the orange line is the number of active donors there. So we can obviously see there's a downturn. We're not actively acquiring the quantity of donors that we used to acquire, but we've got a 72% drop in the number of donors we're mailing since our peak in 2015. But that's only a 42% drop in our income. So we're finding that our warm appeals, even though we're mailing a lot less donors, that we're still getting tracking well with our warm income from them. So that was obviously an indicator of how well our retention was doing, but we also asked our donors in our last supporter survey, we asked them what they thought of our communications and how grateful we were, and the results were as follows. So we asked them, how do you feel about the amount of mail or phone calls you receive from us? And over 75% said it was just right, which was great. We'd obviously love more of those donors that said we didn't contact them enough. There's that little orange slider there. But yeah, for over 75% said just right. And for those that were too frequent, we took them off follow-up mailings, reduced the amount of mail that we send them or phone calls we make each year. So again, listening to what the donors are saying and actioning that. How well did our organisation explain how your donations are spent? So 80% said extremely well and very well. So that's, again, we're really pleased that people do know where their money is going, and we're making that really clear to them, so they're happy to help. And then we asked them, how well does our organisation recognise donors for their contributions? And almost 90% said extremely well or very well. So again, we those donor retention pieces that we've put in are really, really paying off. So earlier I mentioned regular giving, that in 2011 we had 45 regular givers, and we have focused on growing that. It hasn't been the primary focus. The focus since 2011 through to 2018 was cash acquisition, but we have increased the number of conversion conversations that we're having. So we have grown our regular givers from 45 up to around 630 now. And that's mainly been done on the phone conversion, converting our direct mail and our telemarketing donors on the phone. So I was going to jump straight into the future, but I don't think I could have done a presentation today without mentioning the current COVID-19 pandemic that's happening. So we had these great plans about what we're going to do over the next 12 months, a new 4-year strategy for the organisation. Obviously that all changed as soon as COVID hit. So we went out probably put this appeal together within 48 hours and went out with an emergency appeal. We have had to make massive changes to our service delivery because we know that a child with hearing loss has to acquire language before they're 7. So we can't afford to say to our families, oh, you can't come in our centres for 6 months. You can't have the therapy that you need. So we have moved all our sessions onto online. Even our social skills programs, our group programs are now online as well. So we went out to our donors with EDMs, the Facebook ads, messages from the CEO, with our emergency appeal. And we've also this week gone out with a direct mail piece, and also we're calling on the phone for this emergency appeal. As Joel said earlier, contact rates have been great. I think we're at an 80% contact rate, which we haven't had for any of our appeals before. So that's what our current focus is. So another quick poll. So what do you think the current acquisition focus for the Shepherd Centre is going forward? So we've done TM, we've done mail. What are we going to do going forward? So that poll should be on your screen now. Give you another couple of seconds. Okay, we'll close that one off. Oh, I didn't get the results for that one. But okay, so our current focus is regular giving and acquiring regular givers via digital. So as I mentioned previously, we've acquired cash and converted them to regular givers. And new focus is on regular giving, recruiting straight to regular giving so that we have a sustainable income going forward. So we're currently trying Facebook ads to get some leads with, again, dipping our toe in the water with that, just starting some small scale testing, but hopefully this is we're gonna be able to ramp that up soon and grow our regular giving pool. So that's what we're up to with acquisition. So the key takeaways that I want you to take from today are, and what I've learned over the last 7 years, are ride the wave while you can. We definitely did that with direct mail. We grew our database considerably, and we thought it was gonna last forever, but unfortunately for us, it didn't. So ride that wave, but also don't be afraid to change direction. So just like we've all had to with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've had to all react and change the way we do things. So we've just all got to be ready to do that, thinking about what we can do next. And I think most importantly, this is a donor centricity luncheon, is to love our donors, really appreciate them, make them feel special, because they are special and they deserve it. They don't have to donate to us. They don't have to support our cause. So they really should be made to feel special. And that's thank you from little Harry, one of the kids at our centres. Thanks.
Thanks, Jo. I really liked the the way that you guys at Shepherd Centre have really taken on sort of this more, really a range of donor-centric testing experiments over the time, and really shifting from that sort of at-scale growth to more of a sustainable ROI program, and now looking to just expand through diversification of those programs and really looking at sustainability. So I'd like to now look to, so once again, actually, I'll just encourage everyone on the Q&A side of things. Hopefully there's a few thoughts or maybe questions that you'd like Joe to answer back once we complete our second speaker. So really feel free to jump on the Q&A and add questions. We'd love to have 100 questions by the end of the session if possible. And finally, actually, hopefully while we're doing this, everyone's having a nice drink while they're at it. Hopefully that wine or water or whatever you fancy is happening right now. But without further ado, I'd like to now introduce our second speaker, our commercial speaker, John Cole. I've known John for actually quite a while now, up to around 20 years actually. John's actually held marketing director roles at some quite major global publishers such as Doubleday and Guthrie Renko, and he's held a series of other roles in publishers such as Pacific Magazines. John, I guess what stands out for me with him has always been his super talent seems to be that sort of really curious mind around everything about DM, and he really digs into it to such a quality level. But when John's not doing marketing, you'll actually find John somewhere around Sydney on a salsa dance floor. So look out for that if you're ever into that as well. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce John Cole.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Jump into this presentation. Here we go. Joel asked me to share some learnings that I'd had from my career in a variety of different mail order businesses. And so as I'd thought on it, I felt there were sort of 5 major things that had driven success or caused issues. Objectives being one, the importance of metrics and measurement being another, where we spend our time, like what's driving a campaign and what's making that campaign successful. Utilizing offers successfully, and then I know because everybody is working on campaigns running to the last part of the year, just learnings on creative and messaging and how that's been effective. So for most of the mail order businesses I've worked in, there's been a conversation constantly about profitability versus response, and Joe touched on this earlier. And then which end of this schedule are we looking at? How close do we go to profitability? How much is this about driving volume? And for many of the mail order companies, it has always been about targeting right to the very edge of what was considered profitable, and potentially even into slightly loss-making customers. Some businesses would accept a loss-making customer over a lifetime of up to $150. And this sort of marginal cost acquisition was really about giving economies of scale. But fundamentally, it was about building a re-recruitment pool for the retention team. So the retention marketers would come in. Once you'd seen those customers run a lifetime, we would look at where those customers had got to, and then they were ready for even second or even third lifetime recruitment. So this integration of acquisition and re-enrollment. In metrics and measurement, Drayton Bird, who's a British direct marketer, says if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so the agreement of measurement and metrics up front and checking that the assumptions are valid in those measurements is really important. And then one other thing is obviously just checking how we're calculating it internally. And I remember a particular budget for one organization, and we realized we were missing $1 million of profit. And we were about to go and recut our entire acquisition plan. And then we realized it was actually an error in the spreadsheet. Embedded in this enormous spreadsheet was a miscalculation. And we went through the whole spreadsheet, found the error, and of course, back came the $1 million of profit. So how we're measuring it is just as important as what we're doing. And I think we're gonna, oh, here we go. So this is an example of a business who had been targeting a very profitable group of customers. They were looking to grow that acquisition. And they found through media testing a group a new customer group, which gave them a very low cost per customer, very low acquisition cost. And the results were amazing. They doubled their response rates, I think in a few cases more than that. The cost of acquisition was materially reduced. And this strategy was agreed upon using a projected average income per customer. So over time, over a few months, more and more effort was put into chasing this particularly responsive group. A new product mix was created, a new offer strategy was created to maximize that response from these customers. And the media buy was increased to optimize customer acquisition. Unfortunately, 12 to 15 months in, the profitability of the total product group started to decline, and they'd gone from being the most profitable to somewhere in the middle of the business, and within 24 months, this product became wholly loss-making. And it was because this new customer group just didn't hold up in terms of back-end profitability. So we reversed our way back out, changed the budgets, changed the media buy, changed the product strategy, replanned the campaigns to focus on profitability and not on response. And it took another 2 years to reverse those sales losses and return the product to profitability again. So now a quick question, we've got a poll ready to go. Where's most of our time spent on planning a campaign? Is it creative, the offer, the timing, list selection, media? Do we have the result? Okay, I'll just push forwards. So from experience, the improvement of each of these things in terms of response is creative in its best case can give you 20 to 30% improvement in response rate. The offer, 30 to 50% of our response rate. Timing, think about the best month to the worst month where you mail, and the best month versus the worst can be 50 to 100% better than the worst time of year. But the most important bit is the data and the media. When we think about where our time is spent, so much of it is spent on creative and offer, and so little of it is spent on looking at timing and data. And I think in some businesses, obviously, that timing, data, media component is already locked in. We know what we're doing. But especially now, when we're really chasing response, now's the time to go back and maybe look at those the data selections and the media briefs. So this came out of a lot of testing from previous jobs where we looked at the option of offers that were fear-based. So offers where you would miss out, something was time sensitive, and an offer could be taken away. So the concept of scarcity versus greed, which again, another very human emotion where somebody is wanting more. So on the fear side, this would be, you can have this, but you need to respond within 10 days. On the greed side, you can have this and another thing and another thing. And testing shows that fear beats greed generally on a ratio of about 2 to 1. And so commercially, often these offers are driven at with time sensitivity or scarcity attached to them. I wanted to share an example of a test when offering more actually gave us less. So this was a group of religious readers targeted by a publishing company. The first offer was to make a donation to a charity of our choosing on behalf of the purchaser. Then we tested offering a free Bible worth $50, I think at the time about 25 pounds. And that lifted by about 30%. And then we thought, what could be better? Choice is always good. Let's see what happens if we offer both at the same time. And that crashed the response rate. What we had actually inadvertently done is asked a customer to choose between what they perceived to be the right thing to do, which was the donation, and what they actually wanted to do, which was the Bible. And so in that creation of uncomfortableness, the reaction was to do nothing at all. And then finally, just to spend a couple of minutes and talk about messaging creative. And my observation is that the principles of direct marketing hold true across all channels and all media. And just some useful things to be thinking about, particularly now. Winston Churchill said it, use simple words everyone knows and everyone will understand. The most widely read newspaper in the UK has a reading age of 13. which means you could have just about gone to high school and you would be able to read the entire paper cover to cover. And then write as you speak. Keep copy informal, conversational, and where you can use emotional words and emotionally charge a communication, do it. It's where it's appropriate to do it. Speak with passion. People respond to that. But fundamentally, urgency and call to action are important. And so whatever we're doing, we should be asking somebody to do it straight away. Sorry, a little joke in the headline. Always use a numeral, never use a word to describe a number. So 6 words that sell, free and new, 2 of the most recognized words in the English language and are used in, it's the same in advertising through Northern Europe as well. Now and save, best and you and your. All of these are words that are relating back to a customer and the customer is looking for as well. So where we can tap into that language in offers or in communication, we're actually driving our response. As acquisition marketers, we should always be asking what's in it for the customer. And ultimately, it's all about them, whether they're a customer or a donor, and it's never about us, the organization. The packs that I've run where we've tanked a response rate, as we've looked at it in hindsight, we've realized we've spoken about us, the organization, and left the customer out of the communication. Again, in acquisition, never assume that that person knows or cares what we're talking about. We have to make things super simple. And an offer needs to have a benefit to the customer. For a charity, what problem will I solve by donating? And then ultimately explain what that person will get. And remembering that free stuff works every time. The typography, mail order businesses, much like charities, tend to attract an older customer. So point size always big enough to read, supersized point sizes, keeping fonts readable. Serif fonts generally work better when we're talking to people who are older. So people who are more than 50 or 55 generally grew up at school reading books that were written in serif. And it just is an easier thing for them to read. And this doesn't always work online, so I need to call that out. I've tested this numerous times. Reversed out body copy can reduce your response rate by over 50%. And then for layout, again, quotes attract attention. So if we're going to lay something out, make it look like a quote. In this example, those quotation marks are double the actual point size of the make it look like a quote underneath. Use the headlines and the subheads to tell the story and guide the reader through the page before they read the copy. And just remember, especially with emails, that 8 out of 10 people read the headline and 2 out of 10 people read the copy inside. And then show a customer how and where to respond. And this is an example from a business I've worked with in the past. This is their current US website. Each of these boxes are clickable, by the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you can see this is guiding you through. And ultimately, this little green color is the color of that brand, leading you to a checkout. And then just finally, to finish with an example from the Worldwide Fund for Nature from the UK. And this is when making creative a little too perfect isn't the best outcome. So a very large mailing going out to British for British cold acquisition, and unfortunately in mailing 1, there was a mistake at the envelope manufacturer, and they printed the wrong image. They printed the position guide instead of printing the actual image. So it was a picture of a rainforest on the outside of this envelope. The envelope was terrible. It looked awful. It looked like we'd been printing them one by one at home. So grainy, poor quality, low resolution. The results actually pretty much held up. But there was a big fuss. The charity printed the envelope again when they redid the mailing. So beautiful high resolution image, fabulous 4-color picture of a rainforest. It looked stunning. It looked like a brochure. And ironically, the results tanked and we got complaints from customers. So the donors rang and spoke to us and said, why are you wasting money on print? Why are you not printing on recycled paper, which actually we were. And we know it was the envelope because we mailed it a 3rd time. We actually went back and asked the envelope manufacturer to reprint the horrible image, which they promised never to do again. And the response rate returned. And so it's kind of important not to look too perfect in our communication. We need to look like we're conserving money or using our funds appropriately. And so here we go. 5 lessons that I've learned. The objectives, get the measurements clean, focus our activity on the data and the media before we focus it on the creative. Think about how we can make that offer push even harder, and then make sure we're using those principles of direct marketing, particularly now, to make sure we've maximize every opportunity to get $1 between now and June 30. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Well, I think just an absolute wide range of acquisition frameworks you shared there. And I think what I've always found with you, you build that on decades of thinking. So it's just, I think there's a lot of...
Careful with the decades, John.
Right, okay. But there are, yeah, I know. It hasn't been that long for our relationship. But also, I really like the testing methodology. I really think the intersection between messaging and data is just that area of innovation that is endless, that we can continually to get better and better at. So we're actually now, normally we'd actually take a break at our luncheon and have a bit more of a mingle amongst ourselves, but as we're in this webinar format, we obviously a little bit limited, but once again, really encourage, we're getting quite a bunch of questions coming through the Q&A, so really encourage more and more. And perhaps there's some questions for John that's come through around some of the experiences in testing, and likewise with Joe. So challenge yourself and think of the burning question you'd like to really understand more about in this space. We will jump into the Q&A, and I'll kick off with a couple of questions, and then I'll start diving into the questions that you're all sharing. So the first question is actually for Joe. So this is actually around, always really keen to understand with your donor-centric fundraising, like how do you define donor-centric fundraising, and what examples do you see of really hit cut-through results here?
I think donor-centric, it's listening to your donors and acting on it. If the donors are asking for something, then oblige, because there's plenty of charities out there doing great work. So if we're going to ignore what the donors are asking us, then they're going to go and support someone else. So the example I have is that Can We Still Be Friends card. Maybe we didn't listen initially to what they wanted, but we said, oh, could give us a second chance. And then we get such a great response when we do mail those people just once a year. So they're happy to hear from us once a year. It wasn't that they didn't want to hear from us, but they just wanted less mail, probably.
Yeah, no, good listening. A question for yourself, John. So once again, from all this smorgasbord of testing frameworks that you've presented, what do you personally leverage the most when you're doing acquisition from your experiences? And what are the pros?
It's always a choice, isn't it, between the traditional sort of A/B split and single variant testing, which allows you to identify very clearly exactly what's happened. But if you need to move fast, then pack testing moves you forwards very quickly. I think my only comment on that would be, don't waste a lot of time retrospectively trying to figure out what happened in there. All you can tell is that the totality of A is better than the totality of B, for example. And I remember sitting through meetings in multiple meetings with people trying to pick the eyes out of, I wonder what it was that worked. And it's irrelevant. You just need to say, well, we've jumped forwards. We were here, we're now there. That's where we're going to go to. I mean, you can go back and A/B test if you want your way back again, but a lot of time is usually wasted figuring that bit out.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So one of the common questions actually from a few of you have come back, and this is a question for Joe. Actually, quite interested in obviously your emergency appeal that you've just gone out, and really people are interested in has there been any immediate feedback or results that have popped out of the emergency appeal?
Yeah, so initially we went, like I mentioned, just went out with Facebook ads and emails. So from the first, we sent 4 emails over 2 weeks, and the emails alone brought in $13,000. We've now on the phone, so yeah, getting a great response on there as well. The one email that went the best was the CEO message. So we actually got 7K in less than 12 hours after that CEO message went out. So for us, that we don't have a very email responsive database, that was a great result for us for one email to bring in 7K. We need to get Jim on camera a bit more.
Right. Yeah, there we go. Another question, this is actually for you, Joe, in the regular giving acquisition space, was a question around how plainly do you set out the financial needs of your organization and present the sustainability to them?
So with all our pitches, we normally go in with that 1 in 2 children aren't getting the support they need. I think that's quite an alarming stat for a lot of people. And then we talk about regular giving as if you're giving a regular support, then obviously that means we can help more children and we can rely on that income to come in to help those children. And we know there's a lot of children out there that aren't getting the support that they need.
Another question, Joe, this is actually coming more about obviously after the acquisition DM is around how many engagement pieces do you send throughout the year? So backing up the acquisition for a little bit more of a retention question, but more of a practical, how do you back up your acquisition?
Yep, so we send 2 print newsletters a year. In March and August, we send a monthly e-newsletter out. We do a donor care mailing in July that is just a thank you mailing. And then, like I said, we send the Christmas cards and birthday cards to our donors, and then we do a survey as well. So we have 3 appeals and then 4 engagement pieces throughout the year in our schedule.
Yeah, okay. Conscious of time, so we'll do a final question. It's actually quite an interesting question. Maybe it's for Joe or John, but someone's asked a question around given the DM, average DM donor is usually older, i.e. greater than 60 years old, is it ethical right now to be sending DM as obviously people are asking them to leave their house and post return checks? Probably a bit of an open-ended question there for and maybe it's actually just an open-ended question to the audience. Unless you've got some comments.
I know we have if we have a phone number for the donor for our emergency appeal, we are calling them rather than mailing them. We made that choice that was our preference, was to call them. And then we're just mailing people that we haven't got a phone number for. But yeah, great question. But we also have included our website on there. But again, whether there's, over 60s are probably more tech savvy than me. That we're sending people to the website rather than asking them to return the form.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. Well, we'll actually start to close up now. We've only got a couple minutes left and always like to finish slightly early. So once again, as you leave the session in the next couple of minutes, you'll get a pop-up questionnaire and we're still doing the lucky draw prize. So $200 will actually go to the charity of the person who's actually responded to the survey as an extra incentive. We also obviously include all these questions and the results from the survey in our show notes. As a next event, we'll continue our Catch Me into the Welcome Me theme in June 2020. Now, obviously, it may still be a webinar as opposed to a luncheon, but that's hopefully the feedback from today. We'll see that there is plenty of value in the webinar format. I'd love to thank our amazing guest speakers today, both Joe Rogers and John Cole, for really dedicated. I know you've given a lot of your time and really trying to help the collective thinking of this. And also, I'd really love to thank our team, especially Alison, who's really done a lot of work in working out actually how to do these webinars on Zoom, which is a new experience and innovation for our team. But I think we got everything almost right except for those poll results, but we'll definitely share those in the show notes. So without further ado, I'd love to thank everyone for joining in and really look to actually see an amazing sort of period that we can all work together as much as possible and really come out the other side of this pandemic period stronger and more connected than ever. So without further ado, I'd like to thank you and good afternoon.